Have you ever noticed that the more you chase a man, the less he values you? There exists a hidden knowledge, preserved through generations in the deepest layers of the male mind, known to only a few women. This secret holds the power to ignite intense passion in a man, even in one who previously showed complete indifference. What I will reveal today will completely transform your approach to relationships with men. We're not talking about superficial conquest strategies or manipulation. We're addressing something far more significant, something that touches the essence of masculinity at its most vulnerable point. Carl Jung, the renowned psychotherapist, identified in his research on the collective unconscious that every man carries within him a primordial wound. When this wound is properly stimulated, it awakens in him an almost compulsive need to prove his worth, and that is precisely what I will share today. Imagine sparking in the man you desire an attraction so strong that he cannot imagine his life without you. Picture him thinking about you constantly, sending you messages, seeking your attention, your time, your company. What I'm about to share is not a mere technique, but an ancestral knowledge about the essence of masculinity, about what truly motivates a man beyond logic. It's about accessing the deepest dimensions of the male ego, not to hurt it cruelly, but to awaken in him the protector, the warrior, the devoted lover who yearns to prove his worth to the woman he loves. Many women waste years trying to win or win back a man using ineffective approaches. They give everything, offer all their love, all their devotion, and receive crumbs in return. And do you know why? Because they completely ignore how the male mind truly works. Contemporary neuroscience has finally confirmed what Jung knew decades ago. The male brain is wired to value what it needs to conquer, what represents a challenge to its identity as a man. When you truly understand this, you hold the power to completely transform how men respond to you. What you will learn today is something that the most magnetic and irresistible women in history have always known intuitively. Cleopatra, Marilyn Monroe, the great seductresses of all eras, they all instinctively understood this truth about the male ego. Prepare yourself, because after this video, you will never see relationships the same way again. Your way of interacting with men will change forever, and that specific man, the one occupying your thoughts, will never be the same after you apply what I'm about to reveal. Before we proceed, I ask you to do something very important. Right now, write the word "awaken" in the comments. This is not just a simple action, but a declaration of intent to the universe. By writing this word, you affirm that you are ready to reach a new level of understanding about the male psyche. Do it now, write "awaken" in the comments, and keep watching with full focus, because what comes next is the true gateway to completely transforming your love life. What I'm about to share began over a century ago when Carl Jung, after breaking with his mentor Freud, delved into the depths of the collective unconscious. Jung discovered that beyond the ego, the conscious part of our psyche, there exists a far more complex structure that governs our deepest desires. To truly understand how to affect a man's ego in a way that awakens his love, we must first understand what Jung called the shadow. That part of a man he hides even from himself. The vulnerable part that fears not being enough, not being valued, not being admired. Have you ever noticed how some men may seem so confident on the outside, but carry deep insecurities within? This is the duality of the male psyche that Jung mapped in his studies, and it is exactly within this duality that lies the power to awaken intense passion in a man. Let me share a story. One of my clients, Mariana, was completely in love with a man who seemed not to notice her. She did everything for him, was always available, always attentive, always ready to help. And the more she devoted herself, the less interest he showed. It seemed like a cruel irony of fate, didn't it? When Mariana came to me, desperate and heartbroken, I revealed to her the same secret I'm sharing with you now. I explained that the male brain, according to modern neuroscience, produces higher levels of dopamine, the neurotransmitter of pleasure, and reward when faced with a challenge. When something is too easy to obtain, the male brain simply doesn't value it. But let me be clear, I'm not talking about childish games or manipulation. I'm talking about understanding the true nature of the sacred masculine, that energy Jung identified as the driving force behind men's behavior, this energy that constantly seeks to prove its worth, conquer, and overcome obstacles. The first thing I taught Mariana was about the Jungian concept of the anima, the feminine part that exists within every man. This part profoundly influences how he relates to the women in his life. When a man projects his anima onto a woman, he essentially transforms her into an almost divine figure in his psyche. This is the foundation of obsessive love, of overwhelming, in passion. And how do you make him project his anima onto you? This is where the concept of affecting the ego in a sacred and transformative way comes in. We're not talking about humiliation or cruelty, ever. We're talking about touching that sensitive point that makes him need to prove his worth to himself through you. Jung discovered that when a man is subtly challenged by a woman he admires, when his sense of competence and worth is questioned in a delicate way, something magical happens in his psyche. He enters a state we might call heart hypnosis, a state in which winning the love and admiration of this woman becomes more important than anything else. I will share 3 ancestral secrets about how to activate this state in the male mind, 3 secrets that transformed Mariana's love life and the lives of hundreds of other women who applied this knowledge. The first secret is what I call the soul mirror. Jung spoke about how a man seeks to see his best self reflected in the eyes of the woman he loves. When you show a man that you can see his potential, but that this potential has not yet been fully realized, you create a sacred tension in his soul. He begins to want to prove to you and to himself that he is capable of being that extraordinary man you glimpsed. This doesn't mean criticizing him openly. It's far more subtle and powerful. It's showing that you believe in him deeply, but know he can go further. It's that look that says, I know who you can become, instead of, I accept you exactly as you are. This subtle distinction is absolutely transformative. The second secret is the paradox of presence. Neuroscience shows us that the male brain is wired to pursue what is intermittent, not what is constant. This is why gambling is so addictive. The unpredictable reward creates a state of anticipation that releases far more dopamine than a guaranteed reward. When you are always available, always present, always offering your love unconditionally, the male brain, as unfair as it may seem, starts producing less dopamine in your presence. You become predictable, guaranteed. Unfortunately, what is guaranteed is rarely valued at the deepest level of the primal brain. The paradox of presence teaches that you must be like the moon, present, but in phases visible, but mysterious, accessible, but not entirely possessible. This doesn't mean being fake or playing cruel games. It means honoring your own life, your own mysteries, your own sacred journey. When you do this, you affect the man's ego in a way that makes him want to prove he deserves to have you fully. And finally, the third secret, which Jung would call the confrontation with the shadow. Every man has deep fears. He hides the fear of not being respected, of not being enough, of being abandoned. When you, with compassion and wisdom, touch these fears, not to exploit them, but to offer him the opportunity to transcend them, you create a connection that goes far beyond physical attraction or superficial compatibility. This is the deepest kind of wound to the ego, the one that offers healing. It's as if you're saying without words, I see your shadows, your fears, your dark parts, and yet I choose to see the light in you. This is a transformative power that few women know or use. Returning to Mariana's story, when she began applying these three secrets, the change was almost immediate. The man who barely noticed her existence started seeking her out constantly. Messages that once took days to be answered were now responded to in minutes. He began wanting to prove his worth to her in every way possible. In less than 3 months, he was completely in love. And most importantly, it wasn't a superficial love or one based on games. It was a deep love, born because Mariana helped him confront his own shadows and grow as a man. This is the power of Jungian psychology applied to love. This is the power of truly understanding the depths of the male soul. This is the power I'm now placing in your hands. Now we reach the heart of this sacred knowledge. I will reveal to you exactly how to apply the 3 secrets I shared, with practical examples you can use immediately. This is the most powerful part of this teaching, so pay close attention. To apply the soul mirror, you first need to truly see this man beyond the surface. Jung would say, you need to see beyond the persona, the social mask he wears, and glimpse his true self, his unrealized potential. When you're talking, ask questions that lead him to speak about his dreams, not just his accomplishments. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Is far more powerful than what do you do for a living. The first question connects him to his ideal self, to who he truly wants to be. Then, after listening with genuine interest, say something like, you know what I see in you. I see someone capable of so much more than what you've already achieved. There's something in your eyes when you talk about this that shows the extraordinary man you can become. This kind of reflection is like an arrow straight to the male heart. It's not a criticism, it's a loving challenge. It's showing that you see his unrealized potential, that part of him he may not even fully recognize himself. This affects his ego just enough to awaken his desire to prove his worth to you. A recent neuroscience study showed that when a man feels positively challenged by a woman he admires, his brain releases not only dopamine, but also vasopressin, a neurotransmitter associated with bonding and fidelity in mammals. It's literally the brain chemistry of love and devotion being activated. Remember, the male ego needs challenges. When you offer a challenge wrapped in genuine admiration, you create a perfect storm in his psyche. Now, to apply the paradox of presence, you need to understand that this isn't about games or manipulation. It's about honoring your own life and mystery. Jung spoke about the importance of what he called individuation, the process of becoming truly yourself. In practice, this means that when this man enters your life, he shouldn't find an empty space, waiting to be filled by him. He should find a life already rich and meaningful, in which he wants to earn a place. Stop responding to messages instantly, not as a game, but because you're truly busy living your life. Cultivate mysteries and passions that he doesn't have full access to. Have parts of your life that are yours alone, a spiritual practice, a creative hobby, meaningful friendships. When he asks about these parts of your life, share with enthusiasm, but don't try to convince him to participate or fully understand. Let it remain a mystery to him. Neuroscience shows us that the male brain is particularly activated by unresolved mysteries. They occupy mental space and create obsession. One of my clients, Louisa, a holistic therapist, had a habit of telling the man she was interested in every detail about her day, every client, every insight. I advised her to change this approach. The next time he asked about her day, smile mysteriously and say it was transformative. I had some profound revelations today. Maybe one day I'll tell you more about it. This simple change created a magnetic effect. Suddenly, he was asking more questions, wanting to know more, trying to enter this mysterious part of her life. She wasn't being fake. She was simply choosing to cultivate a sense of sacred mystery around profound aspects of her existence. And this brings us to the third and most powerful secret, the confrontation with the shadow. This is the deepest level of affecting the male ego in a way that awakens obsessive love. Jung believed that every human being has a shadow, those parts of ourselves we repress, deny, or hide. For men, this shadow often includes vulnerability, fear of inadequacy, and terror of not being respected. One of the most powerful ways to activate this level is through what I call mirrored vulnerability. It's when you courageously show your own vulnerability first, creating a safe space for him to confront his. For example, share a fear of yours, an insecurity, something you struggle with, not dramatically or seeking validation, but with a sacred calm. You know, sometimes I fear I'm not enough, but I'm learning to embrace that part of myself too. When you do this, you're essentially saying, it's safe to show your humanity with me. You don't need to be perfect or invulnerable. Then, when he eventually shows his own vulnerability, perhaps talking about a failure at work or a fear of rejection, you have the opportunity to affect his ego in the most transformative way possible. Don't immediately console him by saying everything's okay or that he doesn't need to worry. Instead, look deeply into his eyes and say something like, "Thank you for sharing this with me. I see your struggle, I see your pain, and I also see your strength to face it. That's what I admire about you, not your perfection, but your courage." What you're doing is refusing to feed his ego with empty consolations and instead honoring his battle, his journey. You're essentially affecting his ego by not allowing him to hide behind false strength, while at the same time offering something far more valuable, the recognition of his true strength, the one that comes from facing his shadows. Neuroscience studies show that when we feel truly seen in our vulnerability, our brains release oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the same one released between mother and child or during orgasm. It's a primordial, deep, almost unbreakable bond. For a man, being seen in his deepest truth by a woman he admires creates a bond that goes far beyond physical attraction or compatibility. He literally connects to the feeling of being truly seen and honored by you. One of my clients, Teresa, applied this principle with a man who seemed incapable of commitment. For years, he had maintained superficial relationships, never letting anyone get too close. When Teresa created space for him to confront his shadow, his fear of abandonment, his insecurity about not being enough, something extraordinary happened. He cried in her arms. A man who had never shown vulnerability found a sanctuary for his most hidden parts. 3 months later, he proposed to her, not because she played games or manipulated, but because she offered something no other woman had. Offered a mirror for his complete soul, not just its acceptable parts. This is the true essence of what Jung discovered in his studies of the male psyche. A man doesn't just want to be admired for his strength, that's superficial. At his deepest core, he wants to be seen in his entirety, strength and weakness, light and shadow, and still be considered valuable. When you offer this to a man, you awaken in him not just love or attraction, but an almost sacred devotion. Because you become not just a romantic partner, but a spiritual guide, a priestess who helps him integrate all parts of himself. What I'm sharing with you is much more than a set of techniques. It's a path of transformation for both you and the man you want in your life. It's a knowledge that touches the sacred space between the feminine and the masculine, that ancestral dance. Jung studied deeply. By applying these principles, you're not just affecting the male ego to awaken love. You're offering him an opportunity for growth, integration, and healing. And in this process, you transform as well. Think for a moment, how many times have you dimmed your light so as not to outshine a man? How many times have you hidden your opinions, your desires, your power out of fear of pushing him away? The cruel irony is that by doing so, you probably pushed him away anyway. The paradox Jung discovered is that the masculine truly yearns for the feminine in its full power, not the diminished, softened, diluted feminine, but the fiery, mysterious, challenging feminine. The one that reflects not only his beauty, but also his wisdom, his discernment, his ability to see beyond appearances. When you learn to affect the male ego in the sacred way I've shared with you, you're not just changing how he sees you, you're changing how you see yourself. You're reclaiming your power as a woman. One of my clients, Katerina, was a successful executive who always downplayed her achievements when around the man she was interested in. She feared intimidating him. When she started applying these principles, she not only won the love of this man, she discovered a new way to inhabit her own power. For the first time, she told me, "I feel like I don't have to choose between being powerful and being loved. I can be both." This is the true revolution of this knowledge. It's not just about winning a man, it's about winning back yourself, your essence, your sacred fire. And here's the deepest truth: when you master the art of affecting the male ego in this transformative way, you become irresistible, not because you're playing or manipulating, but because you're operating from a place of authenticity and genuine power. Neuroscience confirms what Jung intuited: men are biologically drawn to women who exude authentic confidence. Studies show that testosterone levels, the hormone associated with male attraction and sexual desire, increase significantly when a man is in the presence of a woman who demonstrates self-respect and sets clear boundaries. This isn't just psychology, it's biology. It's the male body literally responding to your feminine power on a hormonal level. So how do you integrate all this knowledge into your daily life? How do you turn this wisdom into a new reality for yourself? Start with your relationship with yourself. Before applying any of these principles with a man, apply them to your own mirror. Look at yourself and see your unrealized potential. Honor your own mysteries. Confront your own shadows. This inner work is essential because you cannot offer to a man what you don't first offer to yourself. Next, start observing how you interact with the men in your life, not just romantic ones, but friends, colleagues, family. Do you tend to appease, agree when you should challenge, always be available, always pleasing? Start changing these patterns gradually, not to manipulate, but to be more authentic, to honor your truth, your boundaries, your intuition. One of my clients started simply by saying, "I don't agree," when she truly didn't agree, instead of smiling and nodding as she used to. This simple act of authenticity transformed how men responded to her. Suddenly, her opinions were sought, valued, debated with respect. When you're ready to apply these principles specifically with the man you want to attract or win back, start gradually. Don't try to implement everything at once. Subtlety is your ally here. Perhaps start with the paradox of presence. Cultivate areas of your life that are yours alone. When he asks about your day, share with enthusiasm, but leave mysteries. It was a revealing day. I discovered something important about myself. When he asks, "What?" smile and say, "It's a process, I'm living." Maybe one day I'll tell you more, not to tease, but because some journeys are truly personal, sacred, yours alone. Next, try the soul mirror. When he shares an achievement or a goal, don't just praise, challenge lovingly. "That's amazing, and you know, what I see in you. I see someone capable of going even further. There's something in you when you talk about this that shows extraordinary potential." And when you feel the trust between you growing, create space for the confrontation with the shadow. Perhaps by first sharing a vulnerability of yours, a struggle, a fear, thus opening a portal for him to show himself fully as well. When not if, but when he starts showing signs of falling deeply in love with you, remember, this is not a power to be used lightly or selfishly. It's a sacred responsibility. The true purpose of affecting the male ego in this way is not to create dependency or toxic obsession. It's to help him evolve, to integrate all parts of himself, to become a more complete and integrated man. Jung spoke about how true love is not two halves completing each other, but two whole beings recognizing each other. When you apply these principles as I've taught, you're not just winning a man, you're helping him win himself. And in this process, you also set yourself free. You free yourself from the need to dim your light, to hide your power, to be less than you truly are, to be loved. You discover that true love doesn't require sacrificing your essence. On the contrary, It flourishes when you are fully in your power, fully in your truth, fully alive. This is the revolution Jung began over a century ago, and which I now place in your hands. A revolution not just in love, but in consciousness. A revolution that begins when you recognize that affecting the male ego, in the deepest and most sacred sense, is actually an act of love for both him and yourself. And so, my dear, you now have the knowledge that few women possess. You have the map to the labyrinth of the male psyche. You have the keys to awaken not just desire or attraction, but devotion, commitment, transformative love. Use this knowledge with wisdom. Use it with compassion. Use it not just to conquer, but to heal. If this knowledge has touched something deep within you, if you feel you finally understood why your past relationships didn't work and what needs to change, share this video with other women who need this wisdom. Every woman who awakens to her true power helps heal not only her own life, but the balance between the masculine and feminine in our world.